that life can feel a lot like a carousel, taking you up and down and around on the same horse? And sometimes you're so caught up in that rhythm, up and down and around, that you're oblivious to anything else, anything better. Then one day, you look over at the gorgeous bejeweled horse and you think, if only I were riding that one. Or the striking purple one catches your eye and you can't help but marvel at its audacity. Sometimes you begin to question why you ever got on that ride in the first place. Sound familiar? Boy, have I lived this. But thankfully, there have been critical turning points in my life when I've decided to simply get off the carousel, despite the risk, because the risk of staying on was far greater. When I was a preteen and still living in my home country of Trinidad and Tobago, I was first inspired to pursue a career in dentistry by one of my sisters, now a dentist, who would regale me with stories about dental school. That initial spark of interest became a burning fascination. And for a career exhibition in high school, I remember creating a poster presentation titled, "A Prospectus on Dentistry." Yep, I was serious. Years later, I enrolled in dental school as planned, and all was well in my universe until my second year in, when we started doing practical work. Up until then, the theory had been captivating, but the more time I spent in the lab, the more I realized that I had no intention of spending my days looking into the gaping, salivating mouths of other people. After some extensive soul searching, I left dental school, and that was traumatizing for everyone else. Professors, family, friends, they just didn't understand my decision. Some believed that at my young age and with my abilities, I needed to be in school. Others thought I was crazy for leaving. And then there was my mother. My loving, patient mother. Now, as tolerant as she was of this hiccup in my journey, I honestly believe that she thought I was experiencing some sort of crisis. It was a lonely time with me just feeling and stumbling my way through a thick fog of uncertainty. But even in the midst of that, I remember thinking, this is my life, and it's my decision, and I was resolute. Here's what happened next. I took a year off and worked at my uncle's hotel and tried to figure out my immediate future. While there, issues around motivation and leadership piqued my interest, but I wasn't sure what I should be studying. Was it business, HR, hospitality management? Eventually, buckling under the pressure from myself and others to determine what I wanted to be when I grew up, I made a call. Hospitality management it was. After researching top programs in the US, I decided on the one offered by Florida International University, and off I went. It was there in my first semester, in an Introduction to Hospitality Management course, that I read about the work of industrial organizational psychologists. I was intrigued and researched the field further. And it wasn't long before I knew that that was exactly what I wanted to do. I quickly declared psychology as my major, and after graduating, moved to Chicago to pursue a doctorate in industrial organizational psychology. Decades have gone by since my decision to leave dental school, and it is still the most unpopular decision I have ever made. Because it wasn't what people expected of me, but it was one of my best decisions. It was from this experience that I first learned that sometimes the best path forward is to reinvent myself. I also learned that Reinvention requires the courage to let go of an old identity or dream that no longer serves me, face uncertainty, and trust my instincts despite what anyone else might say. Early in my career, I left the Windy City and moved to Southern California to work for Ingram Micro, a global technology company. When I flew out here for my final interviews with Ingram Micro and I left John Wayne Airport in my taxi, I vividly recall seeing these majestic palm trees. And the experience of that was mesmerizing. It took me right back to my youth, to memories of slurping fresh coconut water directly from a coconut, and of luxuriating in the warm ocean with dozens of coconut trees up ahead near the shore, wafting gracefully in the gentle breeze, as if dancing just for me. Yes, the palm trees did that for me. And I was beside myself because I realized that in at least one personally significant way, California was perhaps the closest thing to home that I was going to find in the US. I was hooked. And to think that I had interviewed for a job in Minnesota. What was I thinking? Almost 9 years flew by at Ingram Micro when I discovered that I was about to take on the biggest role of my life, motherhood. And do you know what I did next? I changed companies in my second trimester of pregnancy. Who does that? It started innocently, a message from a recruiter via LinkedIn, a series of interviews, and new suits to match my blossoming belly. And then came the job offer, and suddenly my mind was teeming with questions and self-doubt. What if I didn't fit in with the people, the culture? What if I was making the biggest mistake of my life? On the other hand, what if this was a game-changing move for my life and career? In addition to my raging internal debate, I received a mix of encouragement and skepticism from well-meaning family, mentors, and friends. And after weighing everything, I was convinced that taking the job was the right thing for me. After all, I had bought all these suits, so I was really invested. The truth is, I arrived at my decision by asking myself a critical question. As I'm about to bring life into the world, what's giving me life? It was a question that my leadership coach had once asked when I was still trying to get pregnant and contemplating whether that would be the right time for a career move. And now that I was pregnant, the answer could not be clearer. Despite my deep connection to Ingram Micro, my work situation at the time felt stagnant and stale. And the thought of taking the new role was just so energizing. Plus, it took my mind off my morning sickness, so I took the leap, and I've spent 3 fulfilling years at the new company, Hyundai Capital America, because I had the confidence and trust in myself to know that if it didn't work out, I could handle it. Another critical juncture came shortly after my move to Hyundai Capital. Because I had started there mid-pregnancy, I had 4 months to establish credibility, set a vision and goals for my team, and gain some quick wins before heading out on a 5.5-month maternity leave. It was a challenge, but I loved it. I was leading a team of talent management professionals, and it was a playground of possibilities for innovation and change. In fact, it was such a good fit that about 1.5 years in, I was presented with an opportunity to pursue a more senior role at our company headquarters in South Korea. I was flattered, honored really to be considered, but I wanted to be certain that it was the right next step for me and my family. In the end, my husband Eugene and I concluded that it was not, so I declined. But months later, when one of our strategic HR business partners resigned, I raised my hand to add that role to my responsibilities. And just like that, I now had 2 jobs at Hyundai. My day job, the one I was hired to do, and my side hustle. Earlier in my career, I would have been distracted by the promotion opportunity, even though it wasn't the next best move. But somewhere along the way, I learned to think of my career as a business and to treat myself as a brand. I asked myself, when I consider my bigger purpose, my vision for my career, and what I value most, is this choice in alignment? When I consider the work context and the ways in which I would need to adapt, is this in alignment with my brand as a multifaceted person? When I examined each choice through these filters, it was obvious that the job expansion, not the promotion, was, for me, the truly strategic move, as it aligned with the gaps I needed to fill to realize my career vision, while still allowing me to lead a full life. Have I always had a perfect trajectory? Oh no. Have I always made the best choices? Not even close. My path has been carpeted with challenges, lessons, and triumphs, and littered with struggle, loss, and disappointment. And these will all continue to be a part of my journey. But what has always served me well is to say heck yes to the things that are evolving me, fulfilling me, and giving me an opportunity to make an impact, like this Sioux Talk. It's easy to fall prey to the hypnotic rhythm of the carousel, going up and down and around and around. But I've learned how to just stop and assess the situation. Sometimes the best course of action is to try a different horse. Sometimes I discover that I need a new ride. Best and sweetest of all is that whatever I may choose, it's my decision. Mm-hmm.